Let's cross over to our reporter in Mpumalanga, Pepile Kunene. Very good afternoon to you, Pepile. Well, of course, a lot of expectations of the president that we've also gone through this last hour about what the general population of South Africa is expecting. Let's talk to specific concerns in the province of Mpumalanga. I do believe that you are with a guest this afternoon, a political analyst, Speto Dlamini, with you. Just talk to us about the concerns in Mpumalanga.
Yes, in Mpumalanga, there's a number of concerns coming from people. People are slowly losing faith on the current administration. They have been looking for proper roads. They have been looking for help. Some lost their houses due to the storm damages that took place. Some of them as well are not happy about the ongoing lockdowns that are taking place because their businesses are taking a knock. Before we talk to the political analyst, we will talk to a local business owner who will be telling us exactly what he is expecting from tonight's State of the Nation address. But Jackie, what are you expecting from the president tonight?
Good day. What I'm expecting from the president's address today is not stories but actions, because we've been having this SONA each and every year, but only theory but not practical. So now we need action more than any other thing.
Earlier we spoke about the fact that you are not happy with the ongoing lockdowns even though we are faced with COVID-19 pandemic.
Yes, of course, we are not happy, especially with the conditions, especially us as business people. We are hard hit by this lockdown, and little is done from the government, that is in terms of trying to assist the small business people in terms of how do they survive after lockdown.
Thank you so much, Babu Jackie Teller. That was Jackie Teller, who owns a local business here, a pub where people buy liquor, and he's making a living through that. He's expecting more from the president. And my next guest will be the political analyst, Dr. Speto Dlamini, who will also be telling us what they are expecting in the political front. As a political analyst based in Mpumalanga, you have a lot to say around the president's speech tonight. Can you just start and tell us a bit about it?
Thank you very much, Pepile. I think you are very correct to say there is a mouthful basically to talk about. There are a lot of expectations. I'm sure we've also heard from the businessman Jackie here, who basically is demonstrating to some extent levels of frustration with regards to the inaction of government and the amount of SONAs that have been taking place in the previous years. So as you can see, that the citizens are basically in a stage where they really expect their government to start delivering, especially to intervene on areas where they have been hit hard by the pandemic, as Jackie has said. But above that, of course, you will understand that the pandemic, COVID-19, has brought about different challenges to which the government must look at different categories. As you can see, you are basically in an era of digitization. The fourth industrial revolution has basically brought up different specific areas of focus, and that has created quite a lot of mishaps, and the gap between the rich and the poor has also widened. So the actors, the sectors on education, on health, on technology, and on how the citizens, particularly in such areas, can benefit, could be quite important for the president to look at later on tonight at 7 p.m.
Now, we are faced with the COVID-19, and in the COVID-19, there's a lot that is going on. We've just received a vaccine, AstraZeneca, that we cannot really use for our strand or for our variant of COVID-19. And people are slowly losing faith in the system. What can the president do to address that part?
There is nothing more than just reassuring the nation and bringing forth practical ways of making sure that such things as the vaccine do not necessarily bring so much, dishope or a situation where people are actually not hopeful towards what government is delivering. But of course, the role that needs to be played by government towards SMEs, businesses as well, is also quite important for the president to touch on. The issue of the vaccine also brings along issues of wasteful expenditure. As I said earlier on in the morning, to say government must start being accountable. We are hoping that President Cyril Ramaphosa will now move on from just continuously speaking the English of is and was, like Obi Okongo in his book No Longer It Is by Chinua Achebe, to say that now what is it that really needs to be a way forward and a roadmap, particularly for the communities and the small business people around such areas.
And there's also this thing that makes people grow apart. They have nots on the other side, and those that have are on the other side, such that when you look at the landscape in South Africa, it is so wide, the gap between these two groups.
Yes, you are very correct. I think the main question to ask there is that what exactly is the right system of development, or the correct paradigm of development that needs to be applied, but specifically with specific reference to South Africa as a divided society or as a plural society. You will understand that the needs of Mpumalanga could be different from those of the Western Cape. Now, a simple top-down approach could not necessarily be appropriate. And therefore, what is basically important for the president to look at is a human-centered paradigm of development that is going to specifically look at the needs of the people on the ground. You have heard the concerns that have actually been raised by quite a number of people with specific reference to government not necessarily looking after their needs and not trying to find actual interventions that are going to be sustainable in nature, moving forward.
Okay, now let's also talk to the IMF loans that we are getting and the money that we keep borrowing as a country.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How will that be sustainable? Are you expecting the president to also touch on such?
Yes, I must say that he is, even though it's quite difficult to really ascertain what is he going to be speaking about. But of course, such loans have got huge economic implications in the country. You will also understand that there is quite a number of things also that also touch into the different sectors, like on the social sector as well. I mean, I'm just reminded of the 350 grant that government is actually providing to the citizens, and how inefficient that is, and the loopholes and mishaps that happens in there. And therefore, there is quite a lot of detrimental with regards to these international loans, to which to some extent find themselves not well spent. Issues of maladministration, corruption, nepotism and all that. So broadly speaking, we expect the president to indeed touch on that. But as to which angle he's going to tackle that, it's a different matter altogether.
Thank you so much, Speto, Doctor, for your time.
Thank you.
Was Dr. Speto Dlamini, a political analyst based in Mpumalanga, basically sort of outlining what we can expect from the president's speech tonight, Flo.
Thank you very much, Pipile Kunene, for that input and that reporting. No doubt we'll be getting more from Mpumalanga after the State of the Nation address. Many thanks to you there. All right, so let's go back then to the Western Cape. All eyes indeed on Parliament, and we cross over to our reporter Samkele Maseko, who is there for us as well. A very good afternoon to you, Samkele. I was talking to our colleague Mzwandile Mbeje just the last hour, and what he showed us was really quite a sad picture of what's happening in and around the precinct. Really quite empty, not what we're used to. I mean, around this time you would be having your mic in someone's face, asking difficult questions to someone at this point, like you usually do. I mean, I'm sure this must impact you and your work and the work of other journalists this afternoon, as this is not how we're used to seeing you or operating on a day like this.
Well, Flo, just to ask my colleague Bralaki just to show you the quietness that is here in Parliament. There's no red carpet. The parliamentarians whom are, quote, honourable, end of quote, wonder if they are honourable, some of them, they won't be walking down a red carpet. In fact, the President of the Republic, Cyril Ramaphosa, has just left the parliamentary precinct about 5 minutes ago. He was in his office trying to iron out a few last issues before he comes to the National Assembly to deliver the all-important State of the Nation address to just an audience of 50 people in the chambers, and the rest of the parliamentarians following virtually, and the rest of the guests as well virtually, including former President. That includes former President Mbeki, former President Kgalema Motlanthe, who will be on the virtual platform instead of being in Parliament, and the former speakers, Baleka Mbetha, former Deputy President as well, and also other speakers who've been here in the National Assembly. They will be following virtually. So indeed, it's not business as usual in Parliament, and the President has essentially left the parliamentary precinct now, and he's gone to go get ready for 7 o'clock when he will be delivering the State of the Nation address. But remember, Flo, that we would have that parade where politicians and guests show us their various attires and suits and dresses that they've procured, and for the State of the Nation address, the pomp and ceremony that usually happens. But this time around, they won't be doing that, and the state has been saved a lot of money in the preparation for the State of the Nation address. Millions of rands weren't used to prepare and to have the ground going for the State of the Nation address. Instead, it will be on a virtual platform and beamed on all media platforms. And the President has essentially concluded his speech for tonight and is ready, and we wait with anticipated breath to see how will he address the issues of the failures flow of power utility Eskom to provide energy security in the country, to have that much needed foreign direct investment into the country coming in and being pumped in, to save state-owned enterprises that are also collapsing. For instance, SAA has failed to get off the runway in airports across the world, and particularly at OR Tambo International Airport. And you've also got arms companies such as Danel, which are also facing crises, and other state-owned enterprises are seemingly failing to pay some salaries and have had to get some loans in order to be able to pay their workers' salaries. And other entities such as the SABC are retrenching, as well as the jobs bloodbath across the country continues, not only within the public sector but also within the private sector in the country, which has also promised to open up their balance sheets and also invest in the South African economy. They are also retrenching.
Yeah, you spoke about the president's whereabouts. It seems that you know what he's up to today. But I'm also quite interested to know who you've seen or who you've spotted or who you are expecting to see. Mzwandile did tell me that it's not 50 MPs as was previously reported. It's actually 30 MPs, and then the rest will be invited guests. Who are we expecting? Who are you expecting to see, and that you may be able to perhaps chat with?
Essentially, we'll be I've seen Natasha Mozoni from the Democratic Alliance. She's here. She's the chief whip for the Democratic Alliance. I saw her in the precinct just a few moments ago. We've seen Mkhuleko Hlengwa, spokesperson of the IFP and also chairperson of SCOPA. We do expect the Shadow Minister of Health for the Democratic Alliance, Siviwe Kharube. We do expect a Premier to be here, Premier of Mpumalanga, Refilwe Tsepani Mtsweni. We also expect the Deputy President, who is also in Cape Town and will be in the parliamentary chambers with President Cyril Ramaphosa, where the Deputy President sits. We saw him earlier on in Hayes alongside the President and the acting minister in the presidency, Kumbudzo Nchabereng. They were ironing out the President's State of the Nation address and making the final touches. Those are the individuals and parliamentarians that we have seen thus far. And we do expect some whips of various portfolio committees. They will also be here. I know Ntibe Modise is in Cape Town, and he'll be within the parliamentary precinct. The Economic Freedom Fighters, they won't have any member of parliament in the precinct. Other formations were essentially given 1 seat per political formation, and there will be journalists as well in the gallery, and 7 seats have been allocated to us to be in the gallery as well. So, and you don't see the army playing any role in this State of the Nation address due to those COVID-19 regulations. But what is important is that the President has finished drafting and has finalized his State of the Nation address. He did come here to Parliament at his office. He spent about 20 to 15 minutes going through that speech alone and making sure that all processes have been put in line and are in step for when he arrives here this evening to deliver the State of the Nation address. And there will also be that candle lighting ceremony for all of those South Africans whom have perished due to this particular pandemic that we're fighting as a nation, which is COVID-19. And we do expect that the president's speech will largely focus on the procurement of the vaccines for coronavirus, particularly after the purchase of the AstraZeneca vaccine, which expires in April, in that blunder that government had in a vaccine that has a 6-month lifespan but arrived with 3 months to go before it expired here in South Africa. We do know that, in the words of the Minister of Health, Dr. Zwelini Mkhize, that the purchase of Johnson & Johnson's vaccine will be arriving in the country next week. Sometime there's also been talk of purchasing Sputnik 5 from the Russians as well. We do know that there are also engagements with other pharmaceutical companies in order for South Africa to have an abundance of this particular vaccine. There are 20 million doses coming in from Pfizer in the next week or so to come into the country for this particular vaccine. And the World Health Organization has said that South Africa must continue, and they recommend that the country continues purchasing AstraZeneca vaccine, particularly for the elderly citizens in the country who must take this particular vaccine. But that's only one aspect of the State of the Nation address of the president. The second headache is the South African economy and is the failures of state-owned enterprises, particularly one which is the biggest threat to the South African economy, which is the power utility Eskom. Maybe, Flo, you will be load shed at your home at 7 o'clock this evening once the president delivers his State of the Nation address. One wonders if the Minister of Public Enterprises, Pravin Gordhan, has called Andre de Ruyter, the group CEO of Eskom, to make sure that Alan Sandre in South Africa is not load shed and effectively listen to the president. Can I just imagine if you are sitting at home waiting with anticipated breath to listen to the president and you are load shed?
No, well,
that's essentially the state of the nation.
I did see
security.
I did see an assurance that we won't actually be load shed today. And interestingly, a lot of people on social media were saying, because you want us to watch the State of the Nation address. But, you know, interestingly, when you talk about some of the guests, there's one in particular I want to just dwell on for a little bit. That is the Premier of Mpumalanga, Refilwe Mtsweni-Tsipane. I would have thought that she'd be laying low for the time being after those problems that she encountered after she attended the funeral of the late Minister Jackson Mthembu without a mask, and there was a whole she did get into trouble about that. Where's that case at the moment? Or is that kind of done, over, shut down? What is the story there? A lot of people were quite upset about the fact that she went to a funeral without a mask, and now you're saying you're expecting to see her this evening at the State of the Nation address. What's the update there, actually?
She went into quarantine, self-isolation, particularly after she wasn't wearing a mask when they were going to the cemetery of the funeral of the late Minister in the Presidency, Jackson Mthembu. She then decided, after a PR nightmare with her spokesperson, then decided to have a formal retraction and apology to the nation on the issues of not wearing a mask and saying that she was very reckless, and decided to donate about 1,000 face masks to the community of Emalahleni. We do know that she has come out of that isolation and will now essentially be going and will coming into the public domain. Remember that as provinces, they also form part of the National Council of Provinces. She'll essentially be coming as a delegation, probably of the National Council of Provinces, to the National Assembly. In the past, where it was a normal State of the Nation address, premiers of provinces would come to Parliament as a delegation invited, and they would be seated in the chambers with all other parliamentarians. So it's a usual practice that premiers do come to the State of the Nation address. It also comes at a time where she is shrouded with issues of not wearing a mask, particularly after the government regulations strictly stipulate that not wearing a mask in public is a criminal offence and you can be jailed for it. So we are still waiting for Minister Peggy Hamilton Ele to send those police to go and arrest the Premier of Mpumalanga. But it seems as if it's animal farm. Some animals are more equal than others. Can you just imagine if you and I were not wearing a mask in the public domain? The police would just simply nab and arrest us and release us after 24 or 48 hours. But she seemingly got away with it, and she was hugging people in the National Assembly. But she's apologized for it. She's taken up the responsibility and has decided to donate those 1,000 face masks to the community of Mpumalanga. Particularly, you'd remember that Minister Mthembu was the face of the fight against this particular pandemic of coronavirus, which has turned out this parliamentary precinct not to be as business as we like it. I'm going to call Mzwandile Mbeje, our political editor at the SABC. I'm ambushing him here, but he was employed to be the political editor and to guide and to provide direction politically. Mr. Mbeje, the president was just here in his office in Parliament, and he was here to iron out a few issues, particularly surrounding his speech. What can we expect him to say, knowing that that speech has been done and concluded and waiting to be delivered to the nation?
Well, Samgele, it's quite important that the president will speak to the nation, especially during this very difficult time. And I know many South Africans are expecting something really tangible. And you and I know, in fact, we've been speaking about the situation that is affecting the country currently. I mean, if you look at what, for example, in his January 8th statement, as the ANC president said, you look at those priorities, and you would know that ordinarily the priorities of the governing party normally inform what happens in the country as a whole. So he basically spoke about 4 priorities then. He said they needed to defeat COVID, they needed to deal with the issue of the economy, of course, then there were issues about organization and a better Africa in the world. So in this instance, I think he will confine himself to 2 important issues. He will be telling us about the issues of the COVID in terms of how is this vaccine being rolled out. Remember, there's a lot of controversy around what is it that we procured, AstraZeneca and of course Johnson & Johnson. So he will give a bit more flesh to that situation. And beyond that, he will then tell us what sort of measures are in place to really kickstart the economy that is really flagging. So that will be the thrust of his speech. Yes, he will touch on a number of other issues, but those are the main ones that he'll speak about.
What comes to mind is when the Chief Justice Mogoeng was speaking in Tembisa Hospital, particularly around 666, the vaccine and the backlash that he received. What do you then take of a Chief Justice who's going to be in the chambers and a president who's going to be motivating for South Africans to take a vaccine, yet the Chief Justice said something contrary?
I think one of the things that he has said, the president, and I think some people have said he may not have said it strong enough, is that we need to be aware of fake news. And, in the world of social media, unfortunately, it's accompanied by a lot of fake news. And I think he may warn against the spreading of the fake news, and because some people end up being skeptical for real, because there is so much of fake news going around. But this is the other thing that I think will happen, is that you remember when he addressed the nation, I think was it last week, or 2 weeks ago, or even 3, where he basically said, listen, we have made this provision of the vaccine so that people can be vaccinated, but not a single person will be forced to have that. So it somehow deals with the issue around the spreading of the fake news. I mean, you and I know that 5G is meant to enhance the connectivity that we have, but there are some people who have decided to create that as a source of fake news. And obviously it doesn't inspire confidence that the Chief Justice may have uttered those words. But of course, he uttered them very, very guardedly to say, if so the vaccine are not correct. So you see, and he can always argue, and he's a legal person. But basically the issue of fake news, and he may touch on it, especially when he talks about the issues of vaccine, but indeed, and then he will reiterate that people are not forced to take it.
Thank you very much, Mzwandile Mbeje, the political editor here at the SABC. Just to use an illustration of the mic stand here, over there, where you can see the symbol of freedom and democracy just above it. 3 arms of the state in a normal situation would be there. That would be the executive, that would be Parliament, and would be the judiciary. That is not going to happen this year. There is no red carpet. There will be no 21-gun salute. That is all been excluded from the State of the Nation address. Parliamentarians with their fancy suits and dresses, that's done away with this year due to COVID-19. They are just like you and I today, like the ordinary citizen. The pomp and ceremony, that's not happening. The festivities, once the State of the Nation address is done, those who go to Cubana and other places of entertainment, that is done away with. One wonders how much the city of Cape Town economy has suffered this time around with all that pompous and ceremony and the various dignitaries that come and descend onto Cape Town, and how much they pump into the economy, how the city has suffered on that economic thrust. So the president has a fine balancing act to do, saving lives and saving the economy. He can't choose either one, because with no people, there is no economy. So it's a fine balancing act, and he needs to act on South Africans, but knowing that the single biggest threat to the South African economy, which has said there will be no load shedding today, just yesterday there was stage 3 load shedding by Eskom. Years on, they failed to eradicate load shedding, which is ultimately having a catastrophic effect on job creation in the country.
All right, Samkele, you have exactly 2.5 hours until the president speaks this evening, as I look at that clock as we count down to the State of the Nation address this evening. So let me let you go. Thank you very much to you and Mzwandile Mpeje there for us reporting outside Parliament, and no doubt will indeed be catching up with you closer to the time that the president will be up on that stage. That's our reporters, our political editor, in fact, Mzwandile Mpeje, and senior reporter Samkele Maseko outside Parliament there in Cape Town for us in the Western Cape. We continue our conversation then on expectations regarding the State of the Nation address. We're now joined via Zoom by Professor Zwelinzima Mandevu from Stellenbosch University. Sir, a very good afternoon to you. Thank you so very much for being with us here on SABC News this afternoon.
Good afternoon, and good afternoon to your viewers as well.
Let me pick up from where my colleague left off there as he was speaking outside Parliament. Samkele Maseko said that it'll be a fine balancing act for the president as he kind of has to, decide between the issue of saving lives and saving the economy. And I think that's a good start for us in terms of our discussion. Where exactly do you think the president should really be focusing as he speaks to the nation today on the state of the nation? Where are we? I mean, we're hearing businesses complaining that the economy needs to be opened up further. And of course, the biggest concern being that of saving lives. So that fine balancing act, where do you stand, sir?
I think the president has no choice. Both are very important. But the most important one is that in order for the economy to be viable, in order for the economy to function properly, you would have to also save lives. So I think he's got his work cut out in dealing with these two. But I think I think you would have to look at the health system, make sure that the health system is functional, is able to be responsive to this current pandemic, and thereafter make sure that also the economy is recovering so that it can create more jobs. And when people are getting jobs and they can work and get income, then that would help him a bit to deal with the current situation. Because this is indeed a difficult situation, a crisis of some sort that he would have to navigate to. So both are are very important for me.
Yeah. Prof, of course, every president will get his or her fair share of criticism during their tenure of presidency. But if we're to assess President Cyril Ramaphosa's performance as the country's leader, particularly the past year, as we've been dealing with that pandemic, what would you say? I mean, if one is to look at the State of the Nation address last year to this State of the Nation address, if we were to look at just that year, what is your assessment, Prof?
I think it would be a very mixed scorecard. I will tell you, immediately after the State of the Nation last year, we had the lockdown, a very stringent lockdown where everything had to shut down. And the president had the goodwill of all South Africans at that time, because the message was very clear as to why there was a lockdown, and he had the support of the community. Then immediately after June, things changed because there were a lot of different messages coming out. And he comes to the State of the Nation under that cloud where people are no longer trusting or are no longer believing everything that the government and the president put on the table. So he is at a situation where he needs to save his leadership face. He also needs to make sure that he gives people hope again. But people can no longer live on hope alone. They want to see programmatic actions that he's going to bring on the table, and how the then government would make sure that it deals with issues of unemployment, issues of health, and issues of social services and all of those things. So he comes at a time when it is very challenging. But what is on his side is the goodwill of our people, that they are willing to retrust him again. This is an opportunity for him to give them the reason to trust, for them to trust him again. Yeah. So it is an opportunity that he should not miss.
Yeah, Prof, I spoke to your colleague in the last hour, Professor, your colleague there at the Stellenbosch University, Professor Amanda Gous, and she spoke about what she believes to be a trust deficit. If you look at how, the South Africans are viewing the president and indeed the government in general. Are you of the view that there is a chance to get that confidence back of the current leadership? And one of the issues that we raised in particular was that of the corruption that we've kind of been faced with throughout last year when it comes to PPE and all of that we saw last year. Is it too far gone, or is there an opportunity now to kind of win back that confidence?
I think the president came at a time when he became a president of the Republic, at a time when corruption was rife, and people needed something that would then take them out of corruption or the situation. And the president was really something that everybody looked up to take the country out of that situation. But unfortunately, the past few months has actually eroded any attempts that the president has made to deal with corruption, because we have seen in the past few months people embezzling public funds with impunity, and the non-action of public law enforcement institutions have eroded that trust that people had in the public service and in the president himself. So what would save the president would be to come up with programmatic action on what would be done to deal with corruption, what would be done to deal with those who are found guilty. The justice system must turn around too quickly to be able to deal with these things. And we also do not want to see law enforcement agencies hold press conferences to tell communities about statistics, but they should be telling about finalization of cases and how many people have then been incarcerated thereof, and that would bring confidence of the people to the president and his leadership.
Prof, a great pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so very much for giving us your time and your input this afternoon on SABC News. Many thanks, sir.
Thank you very much.